the responsibility of making sure people know what thus saith the Lord. But let us make sure we don't get adjusted to the darkness. I had a dinner the other night with friends, and one of those friends brought this up, and a bell went off in my head. He said he remembered an old preacher named Vance Havner. Boy, he was one of the best. I heard him. I met him. I talked with him. And he preached a sermon called, Don't Get Used to the Darkness. I remember preaching something along those lines back at the old church one time, and it reminded me of something that actually stoked my interest in that.
Hello, Anointed Ones. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into another powerful sermon from Pastor Loran, Livingston Central Church, Charlotte. This man does not hold back. He preaches with fire, conviction, and zero concern for being politically correct. In today's clips, he's dropping some serious truth bombs about how Christians can slowly get used to sin and spiritual filth without even realizing it, and how many modern preachers are failing in their responsibility to actually preach the word. He calls out preachers who seek to appease people instead of preaching the truth. If you've ever felt like the church today is getting a little too comfortable with the world, you're going to want to hear this. Let's jump in.
Our girls were little. I don't even think we had Abby, the fourth one, yet. So our first two we were putting them to bed one night, and it was dark, and we turned the light out, and Amy said, I'm scared of the dark. I don't like it. I can't see. And Anna, the oldest, said, oh, you'll get used to it. If you stay in it long enough, you'll begin to see a few things. You'll be all right. You'll get used to it. And I heard that, and I said, that is a good message right there. And so this pastor comes to this pulpit again and reminds the people, don't ever get adjusted to the darkness. Stay in a spiritual place where it makes you sick, where it frightens you, where you want to get out of it. Because if you get adjusted to the darkness, the things that offend God won't offend you anymore. And the things of this world that are going to bring the judgment of God upon this world will not upset you anymore. It's human tendency to adjust. I know I'm going to date myself, and a lot of you younger ones will say, what? What are you talking about? Let your mom and daddy or your grandparents tell you. I remember when in the 50s, I was just a small lad. I heard about this guy named Elvis Presley. And I only heard about it because the preachers were preaching madly about this crazy man. And I'm not kidding. I heard one preacher preach with tears in his eyes and said, my God, what is happening to our world? Just because a guy shook his hips. And see, look, but you're laughing now. They weren't laughing then. They were totally disturbed that this kind of music had come to the nation. But then I remember in the 60s when the Beatles came along, they were laughing at Elvis, but now they're concerned about the Beatles and that haircut. They were even in a suit, but they had that haircut. And I heard preachers moaning and groaning. Wow, we laugh at them now. Remember the program Bewitched? I remember when everybody was preaching and crying and saying our society is going to hell, we're under the curse of witches, and who would ever think that a show about a witch would be on TV even though it was a comedy? We're laughing about that now, about that pretty little Elizabeth Montgomery who could wiggle her nose and make things happen. See, isn't that sweet? But we got used to it, and they used to moan and cry and fast and pray over it. But now the TV is full of demons. Video games are demonic. We got used to it, and we're going to get used to this. The same thing's going to happen to the LGBTQ movement. We're just going to get used to it. Everything that's wrong now, society's going to get used to it, and they're going to go deeper and darker. And Paul's admonition here is a warning. We are of the day. Don't ever get used to the night. We are of the light. We live in life. Don't ever adjust to darkness and death. Stay in the presence of Jesus. It's important that I tell you often, even to the point of aggravating you, that it is so easy to become accustomed to filth and feel at home in the garbage pile. If you stay there long enough, you won't smell it anymore. Anywhere you go, anything you do that first offends you, you will adjust to it. And Paul is saying here, there's coming a day when they will say, peace and safety. The promise of peace is all going to work out, and we're all safe. That day is coming, they declare. Now, we know specifically he's talking about when the tribulation begins and the Antichrist and Israel sign a treaty together. The church will be gone, we'll be in heaven. The great tribulation will begin, and in order for Israel to survive, by the way, doesn't it look like everybody's turning against Israel now? Have you ever in your life, this tiny little nation this big, surrounded by the rest of the world that wants it gone, and we're the only barrier? That's why it is so important that whoever goes into office
Wow, that analogy hit hard. The way he used his own children adjusting to the darkness in their room and then compared it to Christians who hang around spiritual garbage so long that they stop smelling how bad it is. That's convicting. It's so easy to become desensitized. You start tolerating things you used to hate. You stop feeling the conviction you once had, and before you know it, you're spiritually numb. Pastor Livingston is basically saying, if you stay in filth long enough, you'll lose your spiritual sense of smell. That's a scary thought, but it's true.
I want to go to Jeremiah 23 again. I did it a month ago. And I want to remind you the role of pastors and preachers. I also want you to be aware of why this country is in the condition it's in. Why are we wrestling with perversion and accepting it and legalizing it? Why? How did we get to this place? All of the blame goes on the pulpit. Every bit of it. All of the judgment will come upon those who call themselves preachers. Because God, in the Old Testament, raised up the Levites and the priests to be different from the regular population. He said, I'll speak to you and tell you what to tell the people. I'll give instructions to you, and then you in turn give the instructions to the people. And that was their sole responsibility, to tell people what God says and to instruct them in the ways of the Lord. But you know, as you read the history of Israel, that the Levites, they disassociated themselves from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob through their wickedness. They took advantage of their calling, they made money off the people, and they lived in luxury. I tell you today that that is still the obligation of, I will just say, people who come to the pulpit, who go to the pulpit. It is my obligation not to be part of the general population, but to remove myself as much as I can and spend more time with God than I spend with people, so that I can hear the word of the Lord, see the word of the Lord, and bring the word of the Lord to the people. That's my job. That's the job of all preachers. And when that doesn't happen, well, here you see God dealing with priests and prophets and preachers that left their place of duty, that forgot their calling. Here's what God says. They commit adultery and walk in lies. They also strengthen the hands of evildoers so that no one turns back from his wickedness. Do you know what that means? It means when preachers don't tell people what God wants, you help people in their sins. Unless you throw up a stop sign, unless conviction reigns, unless you preach what God says, he says you're only helping people to sin more. And when you do that, he says, all of them are like Sodom to me, and her inhabitants like Gomorrah. He goes on to say, these worthless preachers make you worthless. They speak a vision of their own heart, not from the mouth of the Lord. They continually say to those who despise me, the Lord has said, you shall have peace. See, peace and safety. You're fine. And to everyone who walks according to the dictates of his own heart, they say, no evil shall come upon you. Meaning, people can live in sin, and the preacher will say, it'll be all right. God understands. He realizes that you have genetic problems. Your mama was this way. Your ancestors were this way. It runs in your blood. It's just who you are. It's okay. No evil shall come upon you. And then he said, in the latter days you will understand it perfectly. Latter days. These are the last days. In the last days you'll know what I'm talking about. You will see that I have not sent these prophets, yet they ran. I have not spoken to them, yet they prophesied. But if they had stood in my counsel and had caused my people to hear my words, they would have turned them from their evil way and from the evil of their doings. Do you see what preaching is, brothers and sisters? I am not here to make everybody feel better. I am here to give you instructions in righteousness and tell you what thus saith the Lord. I know people aren't used to that, and they start looking for a church where things feel better. But feeling better about yourself won't take you to heaven. Only a life worthy of God guarantees that you will spend eternity with Him. This is so important to me. This is on me all the time. The responsibility of making sure people know what thus saith the Lord.
Man, he went straight for the jugular on this one. Pastor Livingston is calling out something a lot of people feel but rarely hear preached so boldly. Too many preachers today are more worried about keeping the seats full, keeping the money coming in, and staying culturally acceptable than they are about preaching the actual truth of God's Word. He brings up Jeremiah 23, where God judges the false shepherds who were giving the people false comfort instead of correcting them and leading them to righteousness. That's heavy. This is why his preaching stands out. He's not trying to tickle ears. He's trying to wake people up. If more pulpits today had this kind of boldness and commitment to biblical truth instead of chasing popularity, I believe the church would look very different. What did you guys think? Did any part of this hit you especially hard? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely want to know. If you're new here and you like raw, unfiltered reactions to solid biblical teaching, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Drop a like if this convicted you or challenged you, and I'll see you in the next video. God bless.